Okay, good morning. Thank you so much for being here. This is a little interview to talk a little bit about the responsible conduct of research. Could you go ahead and please introduce yourself and tell us what program you're in and what types of classes you like to teach?
Certainly. Good morning. I'm Dr. Ken Bergevin. I'm chair of the Educational Administration Program at Heritage University, and we are all about training the next crop of great K-12 leaders to help kids be successful in their futures, not our past. So we're all about questioning everything.
Excellent. So when you think about the classes that you teach and how your students interact with when they're out in the field, and making sure that they are thinking about how they interact with the outside world, what does that look like to you?
Well, one of the really, I think, good things about our program is the folks that come to us, many of them already have their master's degrees. They're all practicing teachers or instructional coaches. Some need their master's degree, so we do have that as a pathway. But they're all studying their particular context. So we'll talk about a concept, whether it's a leadership concept or something organizational or whatever, and they'll be able to go study that in their context, analyze it, and think, what would I do as a leader to take this work to the next level? So it's very relevant, very context-based work.
Awesome. It sounds very hands-on and making a real difference in the community.
Absolutely. We are definitely practitioner-based and want to have an immediate impact in those schools.
That's so important, especially in this time and that we are currently in terms of educating folks.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're thinking about your students and what you're teaching them, in terms of research they might do, and research can look a lot of different ways depending upon the field you're in, the way that individuals may or may not use the term, but what are some things that you think they should be considering prior to collecting data in the field or with whatever stakeholders that they're interacting with? What are some thoughts that they should consider?
Well, I think you touched on the really important points, is that research can take many forms. And so I've always been a big promoter of mixed method types research and qualitative research. And I think a lot of what we do in education falls under those categories. And while we are practitioner oriented, I really think it's important for our students to understand basic research concepts, whether or not it's traditional research or action research or the types of things we're doing in the capstone. And the idea of protection of human subjects, ethics, confidentiality are huge, even in the problem-solving types of cycles that we incorporate. And another part of that is understanding the different types of data, particularly qualitative data, and how you do qualitative data correctly. How to dig deeper, how to properly design surveys, questions, how to code the data, how to make sense out of it, that sort of thing. So I think they need to know all of that. Plus, we do encourage our students to go on and think about doctoral level education as well.
I think that's really important. One of the things that I've done with my experiences regarding qualitative data, especially in the field of education, is understanding who you are as the collector of the data and the position of power that you have and how you interpret that data. I think is really important for novice researchers to consider as well. Sometimes it's hard to take your administrator hat if you're an administrator in education and put on your researcher hat, but qualitative data, of course, all data has bias, I think, and qualitative data, certainly you have your own lens of bias that you bring to it, and understanding how to set that aside. And setting that aside can really protect the participants, right? So you're not kind of outing anybody who might not be doing something that you personally like. You also brought up another thing that's really important and very relevant in the world of social, behavioral, and educational research, and that's confidentiality. For all practical purposes, the more you learn about social, behavioral, and educational research, anonymity is out the window. People know where you are, if you're wearing a smartwatch, where your phone is in your pocket. They can identify people out of tens of thousands of people just based on how many steps that you do a day. So I think it was really, I really like to hear that confidentiality. You do the best that you can in keeping information confidential, but sometimes you'll see folks who will still use the word anonymity. And aside from stuffing a ballot box, with an actual paper, you check it and you walk away, it's really hard to have anything anonymous anymore. And I think that's really important when considering how to protect research participants as well. Just because of all the technology that we have, it really is difficult for things to be anonymous. So you do the best to keep it confidential.
Well, and that's very important for us because our capstone model is a collaborative model. You know, we've taken a cycle of inquiry model called the leadership cycle, and we've embedded some of the concepts from Dan Heath's book Upstream into that. And so whether or not you know, you're talking about student data, or whether or not you're talking about, you know, teacher behaviors and practices, you know, we have to be careful of understanding ramifications from a collective bargaining agreement, maintaining the respect for the evaluator, evaluatee relationship and that sort of thing. So they need to be aware of all of that. Plus, the other thing is we certainly don't want them to fall into anything that would smack of an experimental type model, because job number one is, of course, do no harm. Exactly.
Absolutely. So I think one thing that I love about your model and the words that you're using is that it's a constant cycle. What we did yesterday might not be applicable tomorrow. Things change based on input, technology, contracts with districts, positionality within the districts, who the folks are that you're interacting with, and always being cognizant of who you are as the researcher to ultimately protect the participants and the site is so important. So sounds awesome.
Right. And our model, which is kind of loosely based on action research, but this problem-solving leadership cycle is all about working with a core group to analyze how things are going, make the changes on the fly and that sort of thing. And so, you know, we're very careful to point out to them in research terms, the result of this is not really generalizable, but it is certainly practical for their context.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this quick overview of how to look at research participants and protecting them. We appreciate it. And I'm sure that you'll be called on again for more information.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.